In 2018, Insta360 told us to own the moment with a camera that could shoot impossible angles like this. Today we're talking about the Insta360 One X, a 360 camera that Insta360 say can replace your action camera, but is it still worth your money in late 2019? Coming right up. Okay, so before we get into this long-term review, I just wanted to show you what comes in the box with this camera. Camera comes in this white box. This is the Apple package that you can get in Apple stores or on Amazon. In the box, you have the Insta360 One X camera, the Insta360 mini tripod and bullet time handle. It comes with rubber protectors on the top and side, which I've actually removed from those tripod heads, and it spins for bullet time. It comes with a selfie stick, 2 batteries, a quick start guide and some other documents, a protective pouch and lanyard, and also cables to connect to your computer and your phone. In the box it has a phone cable for a lightning connector. It has one for a standard micro USB camera connection. And it also has a USB-C connector, so overall you're covered for all of your needs. What you don't get in the box is the venture case, which is an additional £50 or $50. And this comes with a GoPro connection at the bottom to allow it to be mounted. I have used the venture case and the dive case. The dive case, the audio was pretty awful, as you'd expect, and it also in the footage when it stitched, it didn't seem to stitch properly even when you turned on the optimized stitching. But the venture case, the optimized stitching does work pretty well. I'll show you a clip with the stitching turned on and without, so that you can see the difference. But yeah, I think it's a bit poor that you have to pay £50 for these for the venture case, and I think it's about 79 or 80 pounds or dollars for the dive case, which is pretty steep. You don't have that issue with a GoPro, and you don't have that issue with the GoPro Fusion, which is waterproof and is also a 360 camera. Let's talk about this camera's image quality. I've had this for about a year now. I've used it in lots of different shooting environments. I've taken it snowboarding, I've used it on holidays, I've used it indoors at work events when I was filming a conference, and on the whole the image quality is decent. It's equivalent to about 1080p or full HD. Obviously it says it's 5.7K camera. That doesn't actually mean you're getting 5.7K when you crop in to a 16:9 normal video frame. The GoPro Hero 7 shoots 4K, and that's what you're getting when you edit it. With this camera, the 5.7K relates to a spherical image, so you're not actually getting that once you crop into it. And it is quite a noticeable difference when you compare the two side by side. But in terms of other 360 cameras on the market at the moment for the consumer, this is equivalent or better than pretty much anything else out there, including the GoPro Fusion. The resolution and quality of the stills, they're really good. The HDR mode is excellent. I'll show you an HDR photo that I took when I was doing some property photography a few months ago. This took 4 images on a tripod, and then in camera it blends them together, and you can see the result is really good actually, given how small the sensor on this camera is. To get the same result, I had to use my Sony a7R II with 3 exposures, one for the inside of the room with a flash, one without a flash, just natural light, and then one just for the windows for exposing for the outside. And then you blend those 3 exposures together to create one single image in Photoshop. Obviously that takes quite a long time. It does give overall a better result, and obviously the resolution of the A7R II is 42 megapixels. It's superior to this camera, but given how small the sensor on this camera is, and given that it's just doing it all in camera straight away, you get the image straight out of the camera looking like this. It's really pretty impressive actually. This camera also shoots HDR video. That's a feature that's been enabled in firmware in the last year, and again I would now shoot most of the video on this camera in the HDR mode because the quality is just slightly better than the standard. Moving on to stabilization and audio. The stabilization on this camera is really good. When it came out, Insta360 were marketing it as gimbal-like and better than the GoPro Hero 7. I'd say overall, in good light, it probably is as good, if not slightly better than the GoPro. Once the light deteriorates, so if you're mountain biking, you go into wooded areas, or if you're in any kind of low light environment, it does start to break up, and you'll see in these clips, this is a clip of me mountain biking, and as it spins round, you can see on the tree line that it can't keep the image stabilization, the algorithm can't keep up with the speed at which I'm going over bumps, and you can see the tree line kind of is moving in a really odd way. It just looks very strange. This does, I think, happen to some degree on GoPros, but it's managed a lot better, I think, partly because they're not such wide lenses and spherical lenses, but partly I think just because GoPro have honed that algorithm slightly better. Similarly in this clip where I'm walking along at night, it's good, but you can see it starts to break down quite quickly. The lower light you're in, the worse it gets essentially. So that's just something to be aware of. If you're going to be using this for your holidays, or you're going to be outside with it in good light, then you don't need to worry about it, but it's something to consider. When it comes to the audio quality of this camera, I've seen a lot of reviews online when it first came out saying that the audio was awful. I'd say it's okay, it's not great. In terms of using it for an action camera, it's certainly not very good because you do pick up an awful lot of wind noise. I'd liken it to some of the older GoPros, like the Hero 5, and you can hear from this clip of me snowboarding and mountain biking that the wind noise is quite severe, and you can't really do much to prevent that. On a GoPro Hero 7, for example, a lot of people use the wind muffs that go over. There's like a little jacket for the camera that goes over. I'll show you an image now. And this is a good way at reducing that wind noise when you're moving at speed. For example, if you're on a bike or a snowboard or skiing, you can't really do that on this camera because of where the microphones are located, but also because of the fact that if you put a wind muff on here, it's essentially going to be blocking the lenses because they're so wide, because they're capturing everything in 360 degrees. So again, that's just something to consider. If you wanted to vlog with this camera, you could, but it's not going to be the kind of ideal solution. I'd say it's similar to the internal mic on an RX100 camera or any sort of mirrorless camera really, that they don't have great microphones on them. So I'd liken it to that, but it is possible to vlog on it. I'll show you a quick audio test now, which I did outside with it vlogging. And this is the audio from the Insta360 One X. So as you can see, the audio is okay, but it's not going to be great, and there's no way to plug in an external microphone, unlike on the GoPro Hero 7 where you can get the microphone adapter for about $40–50 or pounds, and then plug in a shotgun mic or any kind of external mic. That's something that you can't do with this camera, so you have to rely on the internal audio. Also, the audio when it's in the case, the Venture case, as you'd imagine, is worse. Again, you can still hear audio, as you can hear on these clips.
Sarah, you're miles away from me. Remember, I've got a broken rib.
But you don't get great audio at all when it's in the case, and when it's in the dive case, it's non-existent. You don't really get any audio through that. So that's something to be aware of when you're buying the accessories for this camera, if you do so. And moving on to the next thing, workflow, which is a big one for a lot of people. I think a lot of people get turned off 360 cameras because they either don't want to shoot actual 360 videos and post those online, or they want to shoot and reframe, which is one of the big benefits of this camera, being able to, it's literally capturing everything around it. So for example, when I'm snowboarding, it's brilliant because I can capture myself snowboarding. It's got such a wide field of view. It's probably one of the only cameras where you don't have to worry about where the lens is. It actually deletes it using its software. So the only time you'll see it is in like when you can see the shadow of the selfie stick from the sunshine. Otherwise, people think you're being followed by a drone or something. It's a really great effect, particularly for snowboarding and skiing. But the other thing that you can do with this camera is reframe the shot. So you're able to pan the camera around, you're able to create a 360 view, all in post-production on either your mobile phone or the desktop app. So this camera's mobile phone app is excellent. It's one of the best out there for any 360 camera, or actually any action camera, I'd say. It allows you to do all sorts of things in post-production, and what I like is you can also use one piece of video clip and actually create multiple videos from that clip by using different camera angles and then exporting it and then starting again. So it gives you a huge amount of flexibility, and it's perfect for things like snowboarding. I absolutely loved using this when I was snowboarding. It gave so many unique angles that you just wouldn't get otherwise, and you can hold it out behind you, above you, in front of you, and it was like having a drone follow you. That's something that I've never been able to achieve with a GoPro, for example. Obviously, once you point that in one direction, that's all it's filming. So if you get it slightly wrong, which I have in the past, if the camera's pointing a little bit too far down towards the snow, or if you're mountain biking, it's too far towards the ground, you don't realise until you see the footage. So unless you obviously get your phone out and line it up using your phone app. But yeah, so that's definitely a massive plus point of this camera. But the downside to that is if you do start reframing the footage into like a 16:9 format or a square format or a portrait format for Instagram and things like that, it does add an extra step. If you're just reframing the footage and then exporting it and then posting it on social media, that's one thing. But if you're making any kind of other videos where you're incorporating footage from other cameras, it basically means that you have an extra step in your workflow. You have to export the footage out of the app once you've edited that footage. You then need to bring it into whatever software you're using, Premiere Pro or After Effects or anything else, and then start adding those clips into your timeline with everything else. Whereas if you were just using GoPro footage, for example, you would bring it into Premiere or After Effects and start cutting it and editing it straight away. And all of this takes time and patience, and it is something that you need to consider when you're buying these cameras, that they're not quite as easy as standard non-360 cameras, but the benefits I think do outweigh the negatives in terms of workflow. But for example, the 1.5 minute montage that I put together at the start of this video from skiing and snowboarding did take quite a long time to achieve, because it was multiple clips and each of those clips had to be edited in the phone app. I end up doing most of the editing on the phone app just because I find that it's overall better. It has more functionality. The desktop app lacks certain functions of the phone app for some reason. I also find that with the phone app, you can hold your phone up like this, and if you're reframing footage, it's good to do it in a desk chair and actually spin around like this, because you can use the viewfinder view to reframe your footage, and it works really well. You can also set pivot points and do all sorts of other things, but I find just actually spinning the camera around works really well, and it gives a more natural feel to the footage. But yeah, overall I think workflow, again, it's something to consider, but if if you're expecting that, then it's not a problem. It just takes you a bit longer to get the results you want from this camera. But that's the same with any 360 camera, really. So the final major thing that I wanted to talk about was durability. Now, this camera, let's see if I can focus that. This camera, as you can see, those lenses protrude quite a bit from the actual camera. And I have to say, the durability of this camera compared to a GoPro, for example, there's no comparison really. The GoPro, if you drop a GoPro, the worst that's going to happen is you might crack the screen on the back, or you might crack the lens on the front, but the lens is protected by a kind of exterior lens cover, which you can take off and on and put ND filters on and things like that. So they're easy to swap out. So realistically, you're going to be hard pressed to really smash up a GoPro. You've got to be doing something pretty silly, or have a pretty major impact. Whereas these cameras, it's pretty easy to scratch a lens because they protrude so much. And if you do that, then it's very difficult to get a replacement lens. I think Insta360 have started doing it where you can send it into them and get the lens replaced, but it costs I think quite a bit, maybe $100 or something like that. And the alternative is you're buying a new camera, which is a £400 camera. So I think in terms of scuffs and scratches and things like that, you do need to be careful with these cameras. They're not as durable and rugged as a traditional action camera. The other thing is, I've only recently been able to get hold of one of these bench cases. I took this snowboarding and skiing twice with no case on it, and I have to say that the fear of snowboarding through powder with this was definitely a real one. On the second day I was out with it, I actually crashed in quite deep powder. This got completely covered in snow and wouldn't switch on, which was very concerning given it was a pretty much brand new camera then. I'd only had it a few weeks really when I took it away, and it was the first time I'd taken it for any kind of action sports. Thankfully it did turn back on. It just got cold, and actually once I warmed up the battery, put it back in, it worked perfectly fine, and I wiped off the snow and the water off the lenses and it was absolutely fine. But there is no protection on here in terms of water. You know, the door, the battery door on here, there's no real waterproof protection, not like a GoPro. Underneath, I don't know if that will focus. Yeah, on there, that's where the micro SD card goes in, and it's got the tripod mount there. And again, that's just a hole basically into the internals of the camera. So yeah, durability wise, you do need to be careful with these. The neoprene case that it comes with is actually really handy. When I first got this, I thought it was a bit rubbish that they didn't provide a hard case like the previous Insta360 One, but actually sliding this in and out, it's really useful. You can just keep it on the camera most of the time, and then when you want to use it, you just slide it off easily. The one thing that does annoy me, and again, I don't know if it will focus on it, that little buckle is where the lanyard attaches to it. The lanyard that comes with the camera. I took the lanyard off because I wasn't using it, and I suppose I could cut that off, but yeah, that buckle, you just got to be careful when you're taking the camera out like that it doesn't hit on there. So yeah, that's just it's a little thing, but all these things you really notice once you've used a product for a long time. I've had this for about 9-10 months now, almost a year actually. And yeah, it's just little things like that you just need improving, I think, on the next iteration of this camera. So to recap, I think, is this camera a replacement to your action camera? Is it going to replace your GoPro or any other action camera? I think the answer to that is probably not. It can do, but I think only for specific sports. So I think this would be a perfect action camera for snowboarding. The battery life is good enough. It will last, I found in cold weather it lasts about 40 minutes probably filming. As long as you've got 2 or 3 batteries, you'll be fine. It's similar to GoPros really. They're probably slightly worse battery life, but other than that, yeah, this is absolutely fantastic for any kind of snow sports. You can mount it using GoPro mounts. You've got your tripod mount on the bottom to attach the selfie stick, and essentially all you do when you're snowboarding, you would just extend this out and have it in front of you. The bullet time function on this is a bit gimmicky. Again, it's one of those things you have a play around with when you first get the camera, and you can create some really cool effects, like the throwing up of the snow that was in the montage at the start of the video. But again, it's not something you're going to use all the time. But yeah, I think for any kind of snow sports, this is a great camera, and it can replace your GoPro to some degree. I think for mountain biking, although I have used this mountain biking and you can create some amazing angles, I think it would be more a second camera for just additional angles if you're filming mountain biking, because I don't think the quality is quite good enough in low light. So quite often I'm cycling in wooded areas and it's just not good enough really for that. And the other thing is, in terms of mounting it and durability, I think a GoPro still is better than one of these. So yeah, stuff like that. I think for water sports, I've not really used this for much in the way of water sports. I did use this when we were kayaking out in Norway recently, and I didn't really have anywhere to mount it, just because it wasn't our kayak, it was rented. So yeah, I didn't have any GoPro mounts or anything on me, so I just had it kind of on, I think I had it in my hand or on the pole, but kind of whilst I was holding on to the paddle of the kayak. And as you can see, it works okay, and by then I had the bench case, so I wasn't too worried about it getting water on it. So yeah, I suppose you could use this just like the old GoPros in terms of using it in the case attached to a surfboard or windsurfer or any kind of other water sports. I haven't used this for diving. I've seen people's videos of diving, and it looks like it deals with low light fairly well underwater. I suppose you're not really having any vibrations or movements. But yeah, it's not something I've done with the camera, so I can't really give any detailed feedback on that. I think overall, I definitely recommend this camera still. It's September 2019. Nothing better has really been released in terms of consumer 360 cameras so far. It's still probably the best one out there. And the GoPro Hero 7 hasn't been updated yet. GoPro are likely to release the Hero 8 in sometime in the next probably month or so. But I'm sure that even if this camera, if Insta360 release an updated version of this camera, it's probably not going to be huge upgrades to it. And if there are, this camera is going to come down significantly in price. So I'd still recommend it to anyone who wants to get involved in 360, wants to use this camera for reframing video like I've shown you can do with it. And yeah, overall it's a fantastic camera, definitely worth the money, even with the minor faults it has and the workflow issues and things like that. Definitely something that I'm glad I bought, and something I would buy again. But yeah, so if you do want to buy this camera, I've got some affiliate links in the description of the video. That just helps me out. It doesn't cost you any more, just gives me a little bit of money to help grow the channel. Please do like and subscribe if you like the video, and click the bell for notifications and all that good stuff. It just helps my channel grow, as it's quite a new channel, This is one of my first videos. It will just help me if as many people as possible like the video and subscribe to the channel. I've got lots of content coming in the next few weeks, hoping to get at least one video out each week. It's going to be a mix of camera reviews, tutorials. I'm a professional photographer and filmmaker, so that's my day job, and I'm going to try and do some tutorials on Lightroom and Photoshop, and yeah, just some tricks and tips on filmmaking in general and photography. And yeah, look forward to bringing you more great content in the coming weeks. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.